Say, test. Sa, ha, test.
You have to close. Yeah, I will put the video now. Down and then.
Test, test 1 2 3. Murat abi. Bak bu bir.
Goedemorgen. Goed. Alles goed met jou?
Test 1 2 3. Bu 10. Bu
Day
1.
of COP for you.
1
It's like
1
marathon. Ticking time.
9. 1 test 1 2. Kaça kadar? 0 mı? 1 1 test 1 2. 0'a kadar.
The Business Breakthrough Barometer is the first annual pulse check of global businesses on the pace of the low-carbon transition. These frontier businesses are already making bold investments. They are telling us the solutions exist, that the transition is possible, and that significant opportunities lie ahead.
So I think that one of the key findings is a lot is happening around the world, and it's exciting to see different sorts of companies have different pathways they're establishing. The steel sector, the chemical sector, they're inventing new technologies, they're decarbonizing their operations, they're adopting circular business models.
The fact that the solutions are already there and can be deployed and scaled up is a great opportunity for us to actually lead the way when it comes to energy transition and show that hard-to-abate sectors can actually succeed on the transition in time for us to stay within the 1.5 degree that we're aiming to reach.
But there is a challenge. Business case for investment is often not yet strong enough, which is slowing the transition. But with the right government policies, businesses will unleash further investments and innovation.
So governments need to set the tone and create certainty around the direction of travel. One of the most important tasks governments have is to create frameworks and set incentives that unleash the magic of the private sector.
The business function is to solve the problems of society in a constructive manner. And that is where I see my vision is that we will move to a net zero scenario where business will also thrive.
So if we want the private sector to innovate and to scale new and clean technologies fast, and we want private capital to finance all of that, we really need governments with a long-term vision that set the right targets.
One way to get to it is to have a single voice, join forces around the different value chains. Collaboration is key.
The climate cannot wait. The technology is proven, customers are waiting, so let's make this happen as quickly as possible.
The countries that are able to create these opportunities will reap the rewards and gain competitive advantage in the new global green economy. Governments must act now with bold policy to enable this new wave of opportunity.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Can you hear me well? Yes, now you can. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Marcelo Behar. I am currently the senior advisor for COP30 for WBCSD and Sebedis, the Brazilian chapter of WBCSD, and it's my pleasure to be with you today. I think now is better, right? Yeah. Adjusting, yeah. So, as you've seen today and first of all, welcome to the Industry Action Day on the Marrakech Partnership. This is a very important moment for WBCSD and for the industry as a whole. As you've seen in the video on the latest barometer, business do have everything in place to shift and to do the transition. 90% of the business are confident that they know and they are willing to do the net zero transition in the coming years. They have transition plans in place, but only 1% of them are confident that the right policies are already giving the subsidies that they need to do it and that the magic can happen. So in order to connect the 4 dots that I always refer to, the science dot, the dot and the big field on public policy, the marks on the transition plans and the finance to get there, we need all collaboration possible, and we need to set a scene in which business can flourish and can leverage the best possibilities that public policy have to offer. Reason why we have a great panel today to start the day with, in which those elements will be discussed and those elements will be connected. So I would like to invite here to talk to us first Emmanuel Pinot from the Climate Champion team to moderate our panel. Welcome, Emmanuel. And I would like to ask Osa Eskta from the Leadership Council of the ITA and Head of Environment and Climate Change for the World Steel Association, which is crucial, one of the hard to abate sectors. And yeah, I've been in the steel industry for 5 years. I know how hard it is to get there, but we'll get there. And I would like also to ask for Matt Toms from the Director of International Climate Change of the United Kingdom to be part of this panel. Thank you so much and welcome.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Emmanuel Pinot. I'm the Director of Systems Transformation in the Climate Champions team. We are supporting the 2 climate change high-level champions, Razan Al-Mubarak for COP28 presidency UAE and Nigar Alpadarai for COP29 presidency Azerbaijan. And the role of the high-level champions, as you all know, is to bridge the action by non-state actors with governments, including non-state actors, including CEOs, businesses, but also local and regional governments, NGOs, youth leaders, women leaders, indigenous peoples. I'm very pleased to be here today to be moderating this important discussion on the critical role of demand aggregation to accelerate industrial decarbonization. By 2030, we need 700 net zero industrial plants to get to our 2030 goals. However, to date, as the new MPP tracker that was published this week showed, we have only 136 projects that have reached final investment decisions. One of the key blockers to the transition, as we know from the Breakthrough Agenda report too, is the lack of demand for green products and green commodities in general, which is industry sector, but also in the energy sector, transport, etc. Over the years, many initiatives have flourished to help businesses overcome this challenge and increase their demand. Many of you are here today, RE 100, EP 100 in the energy sector, Concrete Zero, Steel Zero in the industrial sector, Zemba and Saba, for example, in the transport sector, or more multi-sectorial efforts like the First Movers Coalition. These initiatives help businesses procure a certain amount of green product in order to decarbonize their supply chains and reduce their Scope 3 emissions in particular. Aggregating the collective impact of this initiative remains a challenge though, and assessing how they bring us closer to our 2030 goals is a bit the object of this discussion today. Today we will also speak of the role of government, which is absolutely crucial to shape the green markets, and how by adopting demand-enabling policies, they can create a level playing field and really stimulate the markets for these green products. So to discuss all this, I'm very pleased to welcome on my left, Osha Ekdal, the head of environment and climate change of the World Steel Associations. You're also a leadership council member of the Industrial Transition Accelerator. Welcome, Osha. So, on my right, Matt Toombs, the Director of International Climate Change of the United Kingdom. Welcome. So, Osha, you will speak more from a private sector perspective, and Matt more from a public sector perspective. My first question will go to both of you. What is needed to maintain momentum in industrial transition through building demand aggregation? And I'll start with you, Osha.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the kind introduction and to having me here on the panel to talk to you all. Demand is very important, as we heard. That's absolutely true for the steel sector as well. You mentioned already a number of initiatives that are ongoing. We are very much involved in those, and I think that we need to continue supporting the existing initiatives. But we are missing policy, and I think that has been concluded in many different assessments now. Recently, a report from the OECD, I believe, assessing the different policies trying to support the industrial transition. That is absolutely clear that the demand side policies are missing. At the same time, they need to be part of the whole picture, because it's not enough in a sector like steel, and I'm sure for many of the other heavy industry sectors, it takes a long time to change the production. So even if you have, let's say, all the pieces in place, it takes years to build a new facility and start the production. So we cannot only focus on demand, we need to focus on the whole package together, because we need to make sure that we can also meet that demand. But I'm very happy that it's, let's say, finally quite prominently on the agenda. And of course, working together is absolutely key, exchanging on what works, what doesn't work, and all the different sectors and policymakers and everyone together. So.
Thank you, Osha. So Matt, same question for you. What is needed to maintain momentum in industrial transition, and what role can demand play in this?
Brilliant, thank you very much. And delighted to be part of this discussion as well. Really good to have the private and public sector both coming through on this. So, I mean, I would say that there isn't a single approach that's going to work for every sector here. So there's no one size fits all. There are a range of different instruments and approaches we need to be looking at. We absolutely recognise that governments have a role to play in setting the right conditions, and the right policies can really help break down barriers and create the conditions for innovation and growth. I'm going to focus on two specific areas, and I think the Industrial Transition Accelerators playbook that they've got in this space is a really helpful framework. One of them is around market-based measures. So the UK for quite some time has been running a carbon pricing model through our ETS system. The EU also has a similar scheme, and carbon pricing can provide a very strong sort of the demand stimulation into the market, and an increasing number of countries are bringing in carbon pricing mechanisms. We're a big supporter of the Canadian-led Global Carbon Pricing Challenge, which is looking to share experience and to promote carbon pricing expertise with a number of different countries. We're also providing some finance to support this. So we've got £20 million for the Partnership for Market Implementation. It's a World Bank program. It's about helping developing and emerging economies put in place carbon pricing frameworks. And this is because we know that this does make a difference. So if you have a €10 increase in your carbon price, it will drive down emissions by almost 4% on a long run average. So that's kind of one element. The second then is on public procurement, and we know that governments have huge purchasing power. They're very active as procurers in construction sector particularly. And we believe in harnessing that power as a demand signal. That's why we're delighted to co-lead alongside India the Industrial Decarbonisation Initiative. And last year at COP28, we signed up to the Green Public Procurement Pledge, which there have been great discussions here at the COP. We've been talking with UNIDO and other signatories like Germany and Canada and the UAE about this. And this really gets to the sort of core parts of the pledge, so definitions and having a sort of clear set of definitions and standards, which is something we're working on in the UK, and then kind of working through that into the procurement policy. So we are very much behind these two kind of elements of demand aggregation, but see public procurement, market-based measures can make a real difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. I think you very well summarized the two things that the government can do to increase green demand: enacting policies on one side and doing green procurement on the other side. Can you tell us a little bit more on what you're doing with IDDI and how you are concretely domestically implementing the commitments you're taking with them?
Absolutely. So if you look at the Green Public Procurement Pledge, so that has kind of different elements within it, which we are responding to in the UK. We last March we published an exploratory consultation on demand side measures as part of a wider consultation on possible carbon leakage options. We had a huge number of responses, so there's a lot of engagement within the UK on this, and a lot of support for the commitments that we then made at the COP28 GPP pledge. In the consultation response, which was published last December, we committed to work with industry to develop a framework supporting the consistent measurement of carbon content of goods and establishing voluntary carbon product standards. So that's a core part of the IDDI's pledge, is to get the definitions, the measurement in place, and then that supports some of the platforms that you can use, for example, around sort of green procurement policies or eco-labeling. The second part of it then is actually building this into our procurement policy across government. So we have a national procurement policy statement which places requirements on any national government, local government, major purchasers like Transport for London and others. If they are bidding for or if they're putting out contracts for more than £5 million, then any supplier needs to provide a carbon reduction plan in place to be able to secure a contract on that basis. They need to explain how their plans are consistent with net zero by 2050, and the specific measures they're putting in place to reduce carbon content. So we've got that in the UK, but we're really looking forward to continue to learn from others, because I think we're all learning as we're going about doing this.
Brilliant. Thank you, Matt. Coming back to you, Osha. So from the private sector to increase their action on green procurement and move from commitment to action, the Industrial Transition Accelerator recently published a green purchase toolkit that is aiming to help businesses precisely do this, and particularly exploring the different market mechanisms they can use. Can you tell us a little bit more about this mechanism that businesses can use to increase demand?
Yeah. So earlier this week, in fact, the ITA launched the Green Purchase Toolkit developed between the ITA and the World Business Council on Sustainable Development. It's an online interactive platform that will help businesses to go basically from their the will to buy green products to actually make this a reality. It addresses specific challenges that are preventing this from happening today, in particular signing of long-term offtake agreements. And these different challenges could include issues around volumes and durations and prices, but also the lack of technical definitions that we heard mentioned before as well. And it also lists the market mechanisms that addresses them. Offtake agreements are very important in the industrial transition, in particular because it increases the bankability of projects. We can see this very clearly in the steel sector because for the first time, I think in a very, very long time, we actually have startups in the steel sector, which we find very exciting. These are companies that, of course, see a business opportunity in the transition, but that would never be able to, how can I say, to really start their project, to put their shovels in the ground if they didn't have these long-term offtake agreements, which would ensure the bankability of the projects. And so we're seeing that now, and it's, I think, a very concrete example on how important this is. I also wanted to raise that one of the mechanisms that are listed in this toolkit is greenhouse gas chain of custody approaches. And this is, again, a very, very hot topic, increasingly so, I think, in the last year. We can see in our membership that companies who feel this demand for low carbon products from their customers are starting to respond by launching green steel products. And many of these products are based on chain of custody approaches such as mass balancing and book and claim. At the same time, there are no common rules for how to do this. There are some discussions starting in fact, in IDDI that we heard mentioned before, but also in the ISO, the standardization bodies and so on. But we decided within the steel sector that we needed to start working on this. So about a year ago, we started developing some principles, that's what I wanted to say. And we've gone on to develop our own guidelines. So again, a few days ago, we published as World Steel, together with our members, our greenhouse gas chain of custody guidelines for the steel sector on our website. And this is meant to be a starting point, and we're really hoping to engage with other industries and, of course, standardization bodies and etc. To refine on these, because we realize that it's a first version and it's not a draft, I wouldn't say that, but it's still definitely going to need some improvement and some further development. So just to, for those of you who are interested in that, please have a look on our website and welcome feedback very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Osha. And you mentioned that also, Matt, how important standards and definitions are. And we are seeing all sectors at the moment discussing and agreeing on common standards for green products. The Breakthrough Agenda is actually stimulating this conversation. In the Breakthrough Agenda priority action, there is a specific line of work on standards and certification. I'll stay with you, Ersha, to ask you about policy, because you started saying we have many things in place, but what we're really missing is policy. So the ITA, again, published a policy playbook this week for green demand, which is focusing on the type of enabling policies that we need to stimulate green demand and green procurement. Do you have some specific example in your sector, in the steel sector, of successful policy levers that have made a difference on that front?
Well, let me just start by the policy playbook that yes has been published this week. It provides an overview, I think, of the different types of policies that are available for policymakers. It focuses on mandatory mechanisms such as quotas or intensity limits, but also carbon pricing that we heard about before. Government procurement is a very important part, and also in-kind incentives that I don't think we should forget about. One example there would be expedited permit approvals, which is actually something that we struggle a lot with in the steel sector. There are a number of successful examples. I'm not sure, to be perfectly honest, that I have any concrete examples for the steel sector. I know that there are some other ones, for example, around sustainable aviation fuels in Europe and the blending mandates that have encouraged the sort of project, how can I say, build up of additional projects in Europe. But it's also important that these policies can be very synergetic over sectors. So we've heard about the IDDI. It's again one initiative that we are very active in as well. It's about construction infrastructure in steel and cement and concrete. And so it's sort of an example where you have a policy on the construction sector, you actually drive the demand in several sectors. In this case, only steel and cement, but it could also mean, you know, glass and aluminium, plastics as you go forward. And it's the same with other commodities. So in the steel sector, a very important future, I would say, low carbon input material for us is going to be hydrogen. And the demand of, I mean, the availability of hydrogen and the cost of hydrogen is going to be very important for our transition. But there are other sectors where this is also important. So if you focus, for example, on green ammonia, you might drive down the prices for hydrogen, which could have good effects on ours as well. So yeah, public procurement, we already heard about. I'm not sure I need to mention that again. Other instruments that we are watching very carefully to see how they play out is the carbon contracts for difference that is being implemented in Germany, and CBAM, of course. Let's see what that leads to, and actually linked to carbon costing mechanisms more broadly. We have emissions trading schemes, and then CBAM might also lead to responses in other countries, and maybe actually will take us one step closer to carbon being priced more globally than what it is today. I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. Great point on the end-use sector and how they are driving demand. And we heard you that there is currently no big interesting policy supporting green steel. So just a message here for policymakers in the room. My last question, Matt, for you. So I think you heard that point, and you probably saw the ITA letter that came this week from businesses calling for more enabling policies. I think it's also one of the key messages of the Breakthrough Business Barometer that was presented earlier. So what do you think of that kind of mobilization? Is that helpful for you?
Yes, it is helpful. Yeah, no, we very much support it, and I think it's a really interesting discussion, this, and clearly there is a further that we need to go in developing the public policy frameworks to support these key sectors, steel and cement and others. I do think, just agreeing with your last point on carbon pricing, that the carbon pricing models have got a potential to really sort of move the decarbonisation of these sectors, combined with a range of other policies alongside them. But yeah, overall, we think this is a really helpful call to action. We need to. The challenge now is working with as many other countries and as many other businesses as possible to embed that in public procurement processes, to embed it in advanced purchase agreements, the sort of first mover coalition types of approaches. And I just add on the sort of urgency of this. We know that we need to decarbonize industrial sectors by 20% by 2030, by 93% by 2050. We need to see a really rapid reduction in the carbon emissions of a very, very challenging high emission sector. And so we do need to work collaboratively across all countries and across public and private boundaries to put the right conditions in place to allow that kind of innovation to get us there.
Thank you. And I think on that, we can close this wonderful panel. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. Very great insights on how to close the green demand gap from the public and private sector. Marcelo, back to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys. And let me see if there is any questions from the audience. If not, I think we can move on the next session. And well, first of all, thank you so much, because really interesting discussion for those who are close to the steel sector, we know how hard it is to do change, and how I think one thing that must be stressed is the importance of time, because it takes a lot of time to change an oven. It's like at least 5 years planning in advance, and it takes a lot of incentives to do so. I remember when we first placed the discussion on green steel back in 2012, shifting from coal to renewables, on bringing it from eucalyptus and pinus, and with big projects. And the board asked me, but Marcelo, where are the incentives to do so? I'm super glad that you're putting together the toolkit so we can build incentives and those things can happen. On the public side of things, very important for the public purchase to be adapted to everything we have to change, because it's not only one sector, is a positive domino effect that we'll have if we change policies on the right direction. Having said that, I think now it's our great pleasure and our honor to invite on stage the COP29 climate champion, Nigar Arpadaray, so we can hear a little bit more around the perspectives of the climate champion on how can we really break through the industrial needs that we have, and what the COP presidency currently is aiming for that. Nigar, thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. What an interesting discussion. I'm sorry that I missed the first part of it, but I definitely had the understanding of what your vision is. It's a great honor for me to address this audience as a high-level champion, the role bridging the work of the parties with non-party stakeholders. The COP29 presidency presented 14 global initiatives, including 9 declarations and pledges, and 5 partnerships, such as the COP29 pledges on global energy storage and grids pledge, on green energy zone and corridors pledge, and the hydrogen declaration. We would highly appreciate endorsement by you on these declarations, pledges, and partnerships aimed to align the climate action with sustainable development. I would also like to take this chance to, since it's the Digitalization Day, it's the first time at COPs that we are hosting this day, just to remind you that we have Green Digital Action Initiatives, which is one of the 14 initiatives of the presidency, which sets a bold example on how digital technologies can not only adapt to the green transition, but lead it. It's more than a call to action. It's a blueprint for the sustainable momentum we need to carry forward into the future. The Declaration on Green Digital Action demands the climate-conscious digitalization. Dear ladies and gentlemen, together with Razan Al Mubarak, UN high-level champion for COP28, and leaders from Marrakech Partnership, I'm privileged to help accelerate and amplify the groundswell of real economy climate action. In many places, our diverse community of non-state actors is leading the charge, proving that ambitious climate action is possible, profitable, and popular. I'm so proud and happy that together with you, we have in the last 12 months really together advanced the global work on the green demand creation as key accelerator for decarbonization. There is an increasing number of organizations in this field. That is very positive, and the real progress is tangible if we compare even to 12 months ago. It's great to see the willingness to collaborate and the continued push to bridge the gap between commitment and signed contracts. We see the emerging opportunity, not only for the private sector, but also from the public sector, including subnational and city governments, to use its procurement power to support the emergence and diffusion of zero emission and zero carbon technologies in energy, industry, and transport sector. This demonstrates the momentum building around the green demand creation. However, we must dramatically accelerate and scale these efforts to meet our climate goals. Looking ahead, I see several key opportunities to take our work on green demand to the next level. Regionalization. We need to advance green demand initiatives in all regions like Asia or Africa, and also South and Latin America, especially as we look ahead towards COP30 in Brazil. Regional and sub-regional collaborations will be crucial. Global coordination. While efforts are important, we must also better coordinate the global demand community to share the best practices and align strategies. The Climate Champions team is doing its fair share in this. We need to reinforce the message of the need for ambitious, long-term and sector-specific policies that will shape markets and give confidence to suppliers and investors. Finally, I want to invite you to make SME central to our decarbonization green demand creation efforts. The net zero transition is not possible without SMEs. They are key to achieving a resilient net zero economy. They are engine of today's economy and the backbone of global supply chains. SMEs account about 90% of all businesses and around 70% of employment worldwide. Small businesses will play a vital role in just transition that delivers equitable human and economic development. However, we know the resilience of SMEs is under pressure. They are disproportionately vulnerable to climate-related risks and shocks and are at risk of being left behind in the transition to a resilient low-carbon economy. 66% of SMEs in emerging markets reported being affected by climate change. That's why earlier this year, we have launched Climate Proofing SME campaign that brings together climate action expertise with local networks reaching to over 90 million SMEs. We already have 40 collaborators that joined us. A record number of SMEs are showing climate leadership and implementing climate solutions. The campaign is elevating the voices of these SMEs as a crucial and underrepresented part of the private sector. The scale of the climate challenge demands nothing less but whole of society approach. As high-level champion, I assure you that my team and I are ready to support and amplify your efforts to accelerate green demand. Together, we can unlock this immense potential. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes. Microphone has been a challenge today. Now I have the honor to after hearing from the importance of the SMEs on the green transition, which is something crucial for the industry as a whole, because those are the biggest clients and they are who really drive the economy forward, and we must drive the economy forward on a greener way, right? So thank you so much for your kind words and for being with us today. And now I have the honor to have a great panel and a fireside chat conversation. And we'll get here on stage our colleagues from Catherine Dixon and Philippe Julien to talk a little. Was it pronounced correctly? Perfect. That's very good. Glad to hear that. So we can talk a little bit about how can we leverage public-private partnership. And please come to the stage so we can talk a little bit more about the industrial transformation. Welcome.
So thanks very much for having us. My name's Catherine Dixon and I work, I'm a partner at Bain, and we worked with WBCSD on the barometer. And I'm really delighted to have Philippe Julien here. He's quite an inspiring energy entrepreneur, the founder of KNSJ, and doing some really interesting things on green fuels. And we know that green fuels are going to be really important for the transition. And we're going to talk mostly today about shipping. Now, shipping is a particular conundrum on climate, of course, because not only is it a pretty challenging sector to transition, it's also, a global sector which has international governance, which makes national action, and of course our COP process is all organized around NDCs, particularly difficult. Now, from the industry side, we know from the barometer that shipping was the sector where companies had the lowest confidence that we would meet a Paris-aligned transition. However, they were increasingly optimistic about policy action because, of course, there's an ongoing debate in the IMO on policy there. Now, that isn't the only good news. There's also quite a lot of progress happening in the shipping sector. So we've seen a continuing increase in the order book for net zero capable vessels. So we had an 80% increase in orders for dual fuel methanol vessels last year, continuing a 3-year trend. And we've got increasing interest in ammonia vessels. But a lot of the industry really sees the shipping sector is hanging in the balance because of fuel supply. And that's what we want to talk to you about, Philip. So I think, the cost premium on green fuels really creates a big barrier for the adoption. So I thought maybe we could start by just hearing a little bit about what you're up to on green fuels.
Sure, and thank you. It's a great opportunity and a pleasure to be here. So for those of you who don't know, we are Chemistry Green. We're a Caribbean-grown private sector project engineering and development firm, and we exist to make green energy projects happen. For too often, we hear about a slew of potential decarbonizing projects in the Caribbean in particular, that are looking for investment. And then the other side, you have investors saying, well, we need those projects to be bankable. So we exist right in the middle. And one of the key areas of focus we've had is being low carbon hydrogen. We've had the pleasure and the challenge of being an early mover in developing Trinidad and Tobago's first large-scale low-carbon hydrogen project called the New Gen Project. It's now majority owned by HDF Energy out of France. And why that's relevant to this whole conversation is for two factors. One is Trinidad and Tobago, in case you haven't figured it out from the accent, I am Trini. We have had a very successful natural gas-based economy for decades. We are one of the world's largest exporters of ammonia and methanol, and that's the first dot to connect to this conversation. The opportunity Trinidad has is there's a natural gas decline, so there's a gap of hydrogen that our existing ammonia and methanol plants are looking to supplement with green hydrogen. Now that comes to the topic at hand where, you know, the world uses ammonia, gray ammonia, to feed the planet. This conversation is about using ammonia to fuel the planet and save the world. So it's the same matter. The context that we're talking about here is the shipping industry being such a tremendously large off-taker, and that's the key word, to drive many of these green hydrogen, green energy projects into existence, to get them beyond the final investment decision line that we've heard at this COP, how tricky it is for green hydrogen projects to get past that line. The marine industry can be a key catalyzer to make that happen.
Right, yeah, well, exactly. So, you know, very, very challenging within the energy sector to get these green projects past FID. Now, I saw that you were one of the signatories to this call to action. If you haven't seen it, it's a very ambitious call to action by the shipping industry, 50 leaders across the value chain, and an impressive set of commitments, but also some pretty pointed policy recommendations by the shipping industry on what you need in order to enable that scaling of fuel supply. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about, you know, what the call to action means to you and, you know, why you see it as important.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're, I guess, theoretically in the space of producing hydrogen, but we view ourselves more as a project integrator. So we look at the various building blocks of what does it take in the energy or supply value chain to make projects bankable. And what this call to action represents, it's a call to action to the IMO and by extension the shipping industry to be bolder, to be more direct in declaring, you know, green fuels as a legitimate offtake for the shipping industry. So we view it as a key enabler for this transformation into this green energy economy that the world is striving for. And it's a very, what I like about the call to action is that it's very precise, it's very specific, it's very focused, and it's very actionable. And that's one of the reasons we're pleased to be a part of it.
Great. And for those of you who haven't seen it, what the industry is calling for is a fuel standard, and, you know, penalties for companies that don't meet the fuel standard, and then also carbon pricing, which can then be used in order to fund, you know, the development of clean fuels. Now, you know, just one of the things that struck me as quite interesting in that call to action was the idea that you might need different support for different fuel types. Now, you're obviously in the green value chain, you know, trying to do renewable fuels. Can you tell me about the kinds of support that you need to get projects off the ground there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to start sounding like a broken record, but the first one is offtake. So we're also working with the government of Dominica, not the Dominican Republic. There's actually an island in the Caribbean called Dominica, who have been blessed with significant geothermal reserves, significant geothermal potential. They've never been able to get that industry off the ground because they've never had the offtake. In other words, being able to go now from geothermal to green hydrogen to green ammonia to create a shipping fuel is a key enabler for that whole country to be moved, catalyzed forward in this green hydrogen economy. And by extension, the other thing the Caribbean needs is money, right? So these green hydrogen infrastructures, green energy ports, there's substantial infrastructure that needs to be put down that, with the exception of Trinidad, who I'll plug separately, the majority of these Caribbean islands don't have that basic infrastructure. So creating a financial enabling instrument to allow them to confidently enter into this space is another key requirement for the Caribbean.
Great. And what does what does the opportunity of kind of green fuels and the transition in shipping, what does it mean for the region or for Trinidad?
Well, it means a couple of things. The key word is relevance, because the world, it is an inevitability that this is going to happen. The Caribbean needs to figure out a way to stay relevant. And the way we stay relevant is to ensure that our ports, our bunkering, our fuel supply allows green to occur. The corollary is if we don't do it, we run the risk of being left behind. And I'm thinking of cruise ships. I'm thinking of container vehicle ships. If we're not set up for success in the Caribbean, I mean, business is business. They're going to go where the industry, the market demands. Now, for Trinidad, it's a particular remarkable opportunity because we already have the infrastructure with extra capacity available to convert hydrogen into ammonia, to convert hydrogen into methanol. We already have an opportunity to be a Caribbean hub of this source of this green fuel supply. We're experienced in bunkering, and again, of course, we're experienced in handling ammonia and methanol. What we need is to drive investment in renewables to the nth degree to our shores, because we don't have the capability yet to generate the gigawatts of renewable energy to electrolyze enough of that stuff to create enough hydrogen for what our ammonia and methanol industry can take. So Trinidad can be is a remarkable, in my opinion, destination for renewable energy investment because we already have a market that is desperate for it.
I see. So in a way, the shipping policy is only one part of it because that will drive the demand for green fuels at the price that you need to get past FID. But I guess what you're saying is that, emerging and developing economies need more support for the other bits of it because you need to build the integrated value chain. Do you want to say a bit more about kind of what you need to see from the international community to kind of make the whole thing happen?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to start by commending the international community through the multilateral development banks, the EU, the Latin American Development Bank, the Caribbean Development Bank, the IDB. They're all active in the region doing what's required, among other things, to enable the cost of capital to come down. Because again, I'm sure we've heard that at this COP. On one hand, where we, the Global South, are being asked to be part of the decarbonizing solution. But on the other hand, the cost of our capital, because of perceived risk, is so high. So breaking that paradigm is essential to allow us to enter into this green energy arena with the rest of the world.
A great point, well made. And then at the local level, when you're developing projects, can you talk a little bit about some of the public-private partnerships that that you've been leveraging to get off the ground, or what you think's needed in that space? Because that's the title of this panel.
Yeah, right. So I guess I can start again picking on Trinidad in a good way. Our historical success with public-private partnerships. When we developed what's now known as the Point Lisas Industrial Estate, which is about 24 world-scale ammonia and methanol plants, it was done in the quintessential public-private partnership. The government came in, they were able to invest in the infrastructure. They were able to selectively invite private sector to join this vision. And it's through this public-private partnership with the government holding the backbone of the energy sector for private sector to bounce off and invest in, created this, what I view as a remarkable success story of Trinidad and Tobago's current energy sector. We're now seeing that replicated as we enter into the green hydrogen space, where the same entity that was established, called the National Gas Company, has now evolved, where they're not only looking at aggregating natural gas, they're looking to be the aggregator of this new green hydrogen gas. And it's not only the national gas company, they've created an entity called NGC Green, which has been designed both to attract and invest in these renewable energy spaces. And their new CEO is sitting in the audience. I encourage people to meet with her after. We also have National Energy, Dr. Vernon Paltu and his team, State Enterprise, just driving, making these things happen. And then NGC itself, which is a very investable vehicle, strong backbone of Trinidad and Tobago's energy sector, has put up their hand and saying, look, we're prepared to be the aggregator in the space to help enable private sector to have the confidence to come and invest in Trinidad. Now, Trinidad's relatively unique in the Caribbean. The other Caribbean islands don't have that advantage and have to leverage other things.
Well, we're probably about at time. And then, Philip, I just want to close by saying thank you so much for your leadership on this. I think it's, we know it's very brave for companies to invest ahead of demand and be pioneers in this space, but also, for pushing governments to put the policies in place. And I think, for those of you that haven't read the call to action, I think, the policy recommendations in there are very specific. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to put to put a lot more attention on the shipping negotiations that are going on in the IMO, because it's a real opportunity, I think, for emerging and developing countries to participate in the energy transition. So thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure. And again, thanks for the opportunity. And I got props to Trinidad and Tobago. We've got some policy writers in the audience, Timmy Bash. They're not here for their good looks. When you see Timmy, you'll understand why. He's not here to hear that. But we're very serious. Not only as Trinidad and Tobago, but as the Caribbean, we're embracing this. We're going for it, and support we can get from the international community would really be appreciated.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Thank you, Philip. Thank you so much for putting together the bricks and the complex bricks, right? Between finance, how can we bring shipment into a greener economy? And speaking of which, we have the pleasure today to have with us the Green Energy Transition Secretary, who's responsible for industry in Brazil. His name is Rodrigo Hollenberg. Rodrigo has also been the former governor of the Federal District, so he's a very seasoned politician and someone who has been committed to the green transition for quite a while. For you that are already being throughout COPs, the next COP will be held in Brazil, and you start to hearing more and more Portuguese. So Rodrigo feels more comfortable to speak in Portuguese. I'll do the translation for him, and I invite him to come on stage. Please welcome our friend, Rodrigo Hollenberg. More than welcome. So let me start by making you the question. How is Brazil helping the green transition for the industry and the breakthrough that we need?
Bom, boa tarde a todas e a todos. É uma alegria muito grande estar aqui com vocês.
Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here with you all today.
O Brasil está ansioso para recebê-las e recebê-los na COP30 em Belém, para que vocês possam conhecer verdadeiramente o Brasil e tudo que o Brasil vem fazendo para avançar na agenda verde.
Brazil is really anxious to host you all in Belém, and so you can see by your own eyes everything we are doing to develop and to make the breakthrough on the green agenda.
Avançamos muito no processo de redução do desmatamento na Amazônia, 45,7% de redução do desmatamento, e avançamos muito também na regulamentação da agenda verde.
So our first efforts have been on curbing down deforestation, and we have achieved the amazing number of 45.7% reduction this year on deforestation. And now I'm going to talk a little bit more on everything we advance on the green agenda.
Aprovamos recentemente a regulamentação do hidrogênio de baixo carbono e também o combustível do futuro, que traz ali mandatos para o combustível sustentável de aviação, o biometano, o diesel verde, além de regulamentar a captura de carbono.
We have recently approved many bills, especially on fuels. So, por favor, repita todos. Many different...
combustível sustentável de aviação, biometano.
the sustainable aviation
diesel verde,
green biodiesel,
aumenta a mistura do etanol na gasolina,
and taking more diesel into petrol, the levels rising from 5 to 20,
aumenta a mistura do biodiesel no diesel fóssil
and also on fossil diesel.
e regulamenta a captura de carbono.
And most important of all, we are now setting the regulated carbon market in Brazil.
Estamos também construindo a Estratégia Nacional de Descarbonização Industrial.
We're also now on the moment of we're building the national strategy for decarbonization,
focando em 6 setores que são os setores responsáveis por 85% das emissões na indústria.
We are focusing on the 6 sectors that are responsible for 85% of the reduction for the industry.
Setor do aço, cimento, química, papel e celulose, alumínio e aço, cimento, papel, celulose e alumínio. E vidros.
Steel, cement, paper, aluminium and glass.
Estamos também, construímos uma nova política industrial que tem como uma das missões a bioeconomia, a descarbonização, a transição e segurança energética.
And we have a new development policy that has on its focus the bioeconomy, the decarbonization, and the energetic transition, the energy transition.
Isso é muito importante para que a gente possa focar os instrumentos de política pública para desenvolver esse setor.
This is really important so we can focus the public policy instruments to develop those sectors.
Crédito mais barato, pesquisa e desenvolvimento tecnológico e compras públicas.
Focusing on the 3 main instruments, so lower interest rates, technological research and public purchase.
Lançamos recentemente aqui a plataforma Brasil de financiamento climático para a transformação ecológica.
We launched here at COP29 the Brazilian
plataforma Brasil de financiamento climático para a transformação
framework for financing the ecological transition.
Ali nós temos grandes projetos na área de hidrogênio, na área de biometano, na área de combustível sustentável de aviação.
So we have big projects on hydrogen, biomethane and sustainable aviation fuels.
Reflorestamento, buscando financiamento e parceria com investidores.
Also on financing and looking for partnership with investors.
Entendo que nós temos grandes oportunidades no Brasil para receber indústrias do mundo todo que precisam acelerar os seus processos de descarbonização.
We have great opportunities in Brazil to host industries globally who need to speed up their decarbonization processes.
Nós temos energia renovável abundante, barata, segura.
We have renewable energy in abundance, which in a very cheap standard and a very safe procedure.
E somos um país que temos relações amistosas com todos os países do mundo.
And we are a country that keeps peaceful and friendship with all countries on earth.
Temos, por exemplo, um grande potencial para a produção de hidrogênio.
We have a lot of potential on the production of hydrogen.
Mas não queremos ser um mero exportador de hidrogênio. Queremos adensar as cadeias de valor no Brasil.
But we don't want to be just hydrogen exporters, but we want to aggregate value in the value chains of hydrogen in Brazil.
Queremos atrair as cadeias de suprimentos, por exemplo, e ao mesmo tempo produzir um aço verde, um cimento verde, um fertilizante verde.
We want to attract the supply chains into Brazil so we can produce green steel, green cement, and also green fertilizers.
Também temos grandes reservas de minerais críticos e estratégicos.
We also have huge reserves of strategic and critical minerals.
Mas entendemos que não é sustentável nem economicamente, nem ambientalmente, transportar de um continente para outro este minério para ser beneficiado e agregado valor em outro continente para voltar ao continente de origem.
And we understand quite well that it's not sustainable to ship those minerals into another continent to get them industrialized and aggregate value overseas to come back and to be sold in our market. So better to connect the dots.
Tenho convicção que o Brasil tem grandes oportunidades de investimentos e isso que nós queremos mostrar ao longo de todo esse ano.
I'm sure Brazil has many investment opportunities, and that's what we'll be showing throughout the year.
Nós apresentamos nossa NDC esta semana através do vice-presidente e ministro Geraldo Alckmin.
We presented our new NDC this week via our Vice President Geraldo Alckmin.
E ali temos traçado os caminhos para alcançá-la.
And there we have tracked the pathways to achieve those NDCs.
Redução do desmatamento,
reduction of deforestation,
eliminação do desmatamento até 2030,
halting and reversing deforestation by 2030,
reflorestamento e restauração florestal de milhões de hectares,
reforesting millions of hectares,
desenvolvimento de tecnologias para uma agricultura mais sustentável,
developing technologies for a more sustainable agriculture,
com substituição de fertilizantes químicos por fertilizantes verdes e bioinsumos,
replacing chemical fertilizers by green fertilizers and bioproducts,
redução das intensidades de emissões na indústria,
reducing the industry level emissions,
e ampliação do uso de biocombustíveis.
And augmenting the number of biofuels.
O Brasil pode dobrar a sua produção de biocombustíveis.
Brazil can double its biofuel production.
Utilizando apenas 5% das áreas de pastagens degradadas.
Utilizing only 5% of degraded areas.
É muito importante que troquemos um ambiente de competição muitas vezes desleal.
It's very important that we shift from a very unfair competition environment
por um ambiente de cooperação.
For a cooperation environment.
Isso exige que eliminemos as barreiras comerciais não tarifárias.
This requires that we eliminate non-tarifary barriers.
E respeitemos e reconheçamos as particularidades e potencialidades de cada país.
And that we recognize the particularities and the potentials for every nation.
É com esse espírito de cooperação.
It's with that spirit of collaboration.
E um desejo muito grande de apresentar o Brasil com todas as suas potencialidades.
And a big will to present Brazil with all its potential.
Que esperamos todos vocês na COP30 em Belém.
That we hope to host you, all of you, at COP30 in Belém next year.
Muito obrigado.
Thank you so much. Now for the, thank you so much, our friend and secretary. If I'll just have our final session now, coming with the alliance that we're putting together to build a private sector agenda for COP30. So I gladly invite on stage my dear friends, Marina Grossi and Peter Baca, so they can give the closing remarks for this session and take a look at the glance of the future, what's coming next in the next chapter in Belém. So Peter, Marina, please, welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. It's very nice to talk after Rodrigo. And there is a lot, since the beginning in this COP, there is a lot of expectation for COP30. The first one in the Amazonian soil and that will be a significant opportunity for Brazil. And what we are doing, what the Brazilian Business Council, so it's the branch of the World Business Council in Brazil, and we start a new chapter in this arena because myself and Peter, with our two institutions, just said, well, we had to make this a pivotal moment in Brazil, COP30. We have 10 years of Paris Agreement. We have new NDCs. We have to make this really to deliver something really remarkable. So we made a partnership, and we are trying to talk with stakeholders nationally, internationally, to see if we can really put private sector efforts align with also with public sectors. And one of the things that we did was the CEO Action Advisory Board, that 50% is the CEOs from Brazil and 50% is CEOs, global CEOs. And we just had our first meeting recently. And we're trying to, with this, to really deliver something concrete, despite what we have in this negotiation process. But I have to advise you that COP30 for us, for BCSD Brazil and for the world business, it starts in Dubai already. So we are making efforts and try to deliver things since then. For us, for instance, what Rodrigues just said, a regulatory carbon market is one of the important issues for BCSD Brazil since 2016. And finally, we are about to have this done. We just had this approved on the Senate, and we're going to have this approved probably next week in the lower house chamber. So that's a very important issue. I think Matt said about that also, and that's something that we are waiting, not waiting for Article 6, but we're trying to move this somehow, having high standards of climate integrality and also make something concrete happen. Another thing that's very important for Brazil is bioeconomy. Nature-based solutions is really an important part to fulfill the Paris Agreement. It represents about 25% of the mitigation that we can do. And we have in Brazil, we have a consortium, so we are also, as a business platform, we were working with the government. So we have in the Ministry of Industry and Commerce working in several areas together, as well as we are working on the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Finance to see how can we get closer what we from business are doing and incorporate transition goals and also the NDC, because that's all about implementation. But I really, we are about to have the next week, the G20 leaders. We are also hosting the G20, promoting the G20, this meeting. And that is really important that we have the leaders there pushing for some outcomes on finance. And so see if we press this COP to have something on this, and also ask everyone to publish their new NDC. We just 3 days ago, as Rodrigo just said, we published our NDC, and the point now is to have the right implementation and the investments necessary to really deliver NDC. So thank you very much, and I pass to you, Peter.
Thanks, Marina, and amazing that you're all here. Thanks for doing so, because it's important. This week, we had the BIPCP, the follow-up of the Business and Philanthropy Forum, the Business Investment Philanthropy Climate Platform that the COP29 champion has installed to bring business, investors, and government together. And that's the only way that we're going to really make a difference. I want to thank the Climate Action Team for all their support, and WBCSD as the focal point for industry. Super happy to be part of organizing this. I have sobering news for you. We will not decarbonize industries by coming to a COP. I know we're working hard this week, but here it will not happen. It will happen day to day in businesses around the world. And why does business change? There's really only 3 reasons. The first one is because they understand the risk of not changing.
The risks in supply chains, the risk in transitions are massive. We have no option but to change. The second is the economic incentives that we get. I mean, Mr. Julian, you talked about the cost of capital should come down for companies and products that are better able to deal with climate decarbonization. And the third thing that makes business change is once demand changes, once their customers ask for different solutions. And that's obviously the topic of the session we're having here this morning. We started off with a video this morning. I apologize for my face showing up in it, but what that is the Business Breakthrough Barometer. From now on, each year, every COP will be publishing such a barometer to show to the people coming to the COPs what is the mindset in business around the transitions we need. 91% of businesses see the transition as an opportunity. 76% of businesses have said we've done more in it than we did in the last 3 years. But also 2/3 of the businesses are saying that the next wave of investments, the investment case is not yet clear enough. And if you download that piece of work, you can find it on wbcsd.org. If you download that piece of work, it breaks it down in all sectors of industry on what exactly are those barriers. And that will make it actionable in terms of what are we going to do next. Bringing green demand and green supply together is going to be a critical element of that. We know we have all the solutions. There is not enough demand for them to scale those solutions fast enough. If you want to scale demand, there are 3 ways to do it. And that's the message from the climate champions. First, as the representative of the UK government was saying, we need to get public procurement in place. The second one is the impossible PPP. We always talk about it, but the public-private partnerships. And the third one, obviously, is demand aggregation in business. So let me give you a few examples of what's going in there. Recently launched, it's a Center for Decarbonization Demand Acceleration. So in WBCSD, now more than 50 companies working together. How do we aggregate demand? What are the standards we need? What is the alliance that can really begin to bring demand together? That CDDA initiative has worked together with the ITA to create the Green Purchase Tool that was mentioned in the first panel. A very practical toolkit for businesses to engage with on how can you actually not just talk about having demand for solutions, but action them and implement them in your procurement system. On PPP, the best example that we've come across is ZEV EMI, and I apologize for all these acronyms. I don't know why we do that in the sustainability space, but it's Zero Emission Vehicles in Emerging Markets Initiative, ZEV EMI. Again, apologies. Working together initially in India, bringing government, purchasers of zero-emission vehicles, providers together to create not only the demand-supply link, but the infrastructure. Because unfortunately, many of these transitions aren't as simple as saying, here's a solution, there's the demand. But if you buy an electric vehicle and there's no charging infrastructure or no renewable energy, you still don't have a solution. So that's happened there. Already 7,500 electric trucks in India now on the road as a result of it. Moving to Mexico this year, where the ambition has been set to create 17,000 vehicles on the road and build it as a platform to thereafter scale. We've had initial talks in Brazil, and that could be a very interesting opportunity to bring to Brazil as well for COP30. And so that brings me to COP30, and thank you very much, Mr. Rollenberger, for being here and talking to us. There's a lot of excitement riding on the COP coming to Brazil. Sometimes I think maybe possibly too much, and we shouldn't forget that we need absolutely strong results from COP29 to be able to have a successful COP next year in Brazil. So we need Article 6 to be hammered out. We need sufficient finance to flow from north to south, and then we'll have the foundation to have an exciting COP next year. In Brazil, it will not only be about industrial transition, it will be about bioeconomy, it will be about circular economy and putting people at the center of all that. And it's super exciting to see you all here. I should check the climate action team staff on the right, but if I calculated right, this must have been the 8th of the Marrakech Partnership meetings, but we can work it out, like 7 or 8. So we're going to have 8 or 9 next year in Belém. Hope to see you all, and thanks for coming out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter and Marina. Please stay on stage. I would like to ask for the family photo now. So I'm pulling back to the family, our dear Fire Chat panelists to the family. Those who are on panels, please come and let's make one picture before we wrap up. Yes, Peter, or I go behind. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day. Thank you so much for the discussion.